Hello everyone, Ciantier here, and welcome to another update of Let's Make a Game Astral Collision. Now last time on Let's Make a Game Astral Collision, I'd done a big update to things where I eventually reached the point where I realized I was not happy with a lot of my common skills. I talked extensively about that, I ripped a bunch up, then I wasn't able to do a playtest. I was able to do a playtest. This is being recorded just after my playtest today on the 8th of May, 2020, a Friday, because that's when I do my playtests. But what I'm talking about here is the sort of stuff that happened in between and sort of the results of the playtest. So we're looking here at the ancient catacombs because this place needs to be reworked dramatically. It's I don't quite know how it's going to look, but there's a lot of things I'm dissatisfied about with how this is arranged right now. Yeah, I don't enjoy the process of making a new team and running through this area collecting loot. So I want to, got some hiccups there. I want to kind of reconfigure it and kind of rethink how I'm handling it. But let's kind of go over some of the stuff that I did. So the big thing that I've done is I've updated all of the enemies. Playtesting has shown that there needs to be more updates. I'd done some of these last time. And I think I just missed getting the proper updates for the Plains Scorpion because that damage, it was not good. So I've finished, I think I'd maybe gotten up to the Harrower updated. It now has, Poisonous Vines skill. It has Hunkered Down. I've updated all their skills and all these things. So I don't know how effective it's going to be to go over everything. But there's, now Poisonous Sting, Hunkered Down, Big Pinch. So if we go into skills, I was just looking at Phantom Kunai because I nerfed it a little bit on account of it being too good. Poisonous Sting is kind of a new skill based on dexterity damage. Has a chance to critical it, and it poisons things. It's just a TP attack that poisons things. Big Pinch is used by the Scorpions. It does some damage based off of strength. Crits really hard and has a pretty good chance of inflicting daze. Hunkered Down is a defensive skill. They recover 10% of their HP, they get the guard state, and they gain rejuvenation. So this is just kind of like a nice defensive effect that they have. Poisonous Vines is basically just a variant on Sickening Soil, because I got rid of Sickening Soil because it no longer fit into kind of my model. For one thing, Earth is now associated with Dazed, and Water is associated with Poison, Dazed being the new state that replaced Confusion, if you're not 100% up on things. So this does some damage and stuff and adds poison to everything. It's a bit slow. Healing Spring is still around. Its effectiveness has been nerfed somewhat. Ancient Wrath is a new spell that the spirits have. I don't know how new it is. It just hits 2 random enemies for a bit of earth damage and can daze. Smite. Did I talk about... I feel like last time I talked about the Fated Divine stuff, so I don't need to go over all of that again. Holy Hand Grenades is here. Hooray. Absorption, Comforting Earth. I'm just looking for new enemy skills. Skillful Strike was around. Shatter Aura was around. I'm pretty sure. If I'm not 100% sure where I was on things, go ahead and let me know. It's hard to keep track week to week. And you have a much better sense for what I've talked about than others. This one I had to fix a bug in during the playtest. I did not originally have this outer set of parentheses, and this was doing very little damage. I think because it was multiplying by this, and then checking, I don't know, something weird was happening. Oh, I think it was just taking oh, I know what was happening. It was taking the spell damage formula times their TP, and if that was greater than 0, then it would do 1 damage. Otherwise, it would do 2 damage. So it was not doing damage the way it was supposed to because I needed more parentheses to make the thing actually know what order stuff was supposed to be happening in. So I fixed that. Splash of Healing's fine. This is a skill that's in the ribbon. I think I talked about that. Did I talk about Wildstone? I've done some stuff with some of the player skill sets. There's more that needs to happen. This is just solid earth damage to a random target, and it always adds dazed, but you don't have any control over its targeting. Dousing Wave does a bit of water damage and lowers fire affinity for 4 turns. I think I talked about that one. Piercing Winds is low damage, but crits really well. 5 times crit multiplier. I should probably have like actual damage or something here potentially. Kenai I need to fix like as just a state. The MP gain off of it scaling with stuff and TP scaling just doesn't make sense anymore. Serpent's Quickness. This is a new skill for Kendron snakes. It's a fairly quick move that gives them lightning reflexes and windborne speed. Lightning reflexes gives you a 50% chance to counterattack. Windborne speed gives you an additional action each turn. Thrash is a new monster skill that just hits 2 random enemies and has a bit of additional plus damage off of your weapon. Toxic Bite and Vicious Bite were around. Slorp is new. It's a monster skill that debuffs you and steals your MP. Drain Vigor is a new bat attack that blood bats use. It buffs their attack and dexterity for 3 turns and does a bit of lifesteal damage off of their life stat. And debuffs you, so that's kind of cool. Bellowing Roar is a Chimera skill. It debuffs a random stat for 5 turns and causes you to lose MP. Just kind of a random amount of MP. It rolls 3d4 and times 2, and it has a 50% chance of inflicting fear. So that's cool. Provoke is a new skill as well. This one's probably one that players are going to get, but it just adds rage to everything. That's what it does. Winded is also a new one. It causes a lot of TP loss. Does a little bit of wind damage. It wasn't really meant to do a lot of wind damage. It cannot critical hit, so I just didn't include critical information, but also always removes the windborne speed state, windborne speed aura. I just like the idea of like it just takes the wind out of you. You're just like, ugh. And I think that's probably it for new skills, because you can see like the damage that was done here. There's still stuff that needs to be updated a lot too. I did have to tweak a bunch of monster skills as well. Consume Flesh and Consume Mind. Like Consume Mind is now just raw amount. Consume Flesh, I have tweaked that down. Shriek of Doom and Wail of Doom have now also been tweaked down, as has Soul Render. So these are less powerful in terms of the raw damage they deal. And I had to do some updates here as well. Reckless Dance, I also tweaked down. It's still really painful. Mesmeric Dance didn't have to get any changes. Lightning Spin didn't have to get any changes. Enticer's Joy, I don't remember that I lowered this one. I still need to kind of encounter this one. There's some stuff that I'm going to be talking about a bit later that makes it a little hard to test some of this stuff. This is a really good skill still. Enticer's Song, I might have tweaked its damage down a little bit, and this one I don't know that I touched. This one I did modify though. So, back to enemies. Like the Plain Scorpion now has kind of some appropriate stuff. Harrower has appropriate stuff. Dire Serpent. Like I've just overall simplified a lot of, or I've made a lot of these enemies have kind of skills that are specific to them. You can see Vile Ooze will use Slorp when their MP is low. And then they have a bunch of spells. Cave Bats use Supersonic Swoop. These have been modified before, though. Blood Bats now have Drain Vigor, and they Vampiric off of their Wind stat instead of Dexterity. They have decent Wind. As you can see, it's Agility at 32. That's their Wind stat. Cave Scorpions, again, like a lot of these things have been kind of modified to just be more appropriate to what is Kendron's skills, right? And that was kind of the idea. Chimera have a bunch of stuff going on here now. They have Thrash, Bellowing Roar, Hunker Down, Wild Stone, Piercing Winds, Poisonous Sting. Deadly Poppies are also like properly updated to use Poisonous Vines instead of whatever Sickening Soil was. They have Hunker Down as well. Mushroom Snakes get Thrash and Serpent's Quickness. Flame Ooze get Provoke. These guys have been simplified. They use the proper things now as well. So they have Fireball and Provoke. This has Dousing Wave and Mass Absorption. Wild Stone and Earthen Embrace, and Piercing Winds and Winded. Fire Imps also now just use Fireball. These guys are like weak for a level 60 enemy, but that just is absolutely crushing when you're at level like 10 and you wander into their island and they wreck you. These guys are, they're kind of threatening, but this gets into a problem, and I'll talk about it with some of these other enemies as well. Wraith Lords are still a work in progress. They're kind of nasty. Enticers have been, I've given them a set of stats over here. Ancient Enticers. So Ancient Enticers have access to Enticer's Song and Rise to Dance Again, which is a Resurrect. And they also have a set of stats there. They're weak to physical attacks. And the Enticed have been, like, they're weak for level 12. They also have the Substitute Flag, and I tweaked down their evasion rates because they were 75, and it was, like, impossible to kill them. So this kind of the rough updates to enemies. You can kind of like pause and read skill lists and stuff and compare notes if you want to. But I've just done a couple of, or I've just done a playtesting session where I've done like 2 kind of like run throughs to get to the boat and over to the main island. So I have my playtesting notes here. Cave spiders probably have too strong of a critical multiplier. That's still probably true. I don't think plain scorpions have their damage formula updated. I did tweak this down a little bit. This is probably, this, I don't know. This is maybe. This is a maybe. I'll have to examine that one a little bit. I nerfed this one. I'm gonna just call this one done for now. You can see like there's different notes here, but this is from like the previous playtest, like 2 weeks ago or whatever. So one of the things that I ran into as a problem that gets highlighted right here and right here and just right here is that enemies are just a little too fragile. Not blanket across the board per se, in that some enemies should be fragile, but the playtest basically showed that once you've gotten like geared up, a lot of the enemies were just dying way too quickly. Now I want them to like not necessarily be like the tankiest thing ever, necessarily, but enemy encounters that are supposed to be hard because of the scaling, kind of going in that curve, right? That, or I should do it with this hand, you know. Wait, no, over here. That, whatever. It's not mirrored, so it's weird for me. But basically, because enemy stats kind of scale a certain way and things like that, players' access to equipment is a bit like it kind of throws some of the stats a little bit out of sorts, if that makes sense. So I think I need to like just maybe tune enemy stats up a bit for like what enemy stat averages should be. And I probably just want to run them on a slightly higher HP scale in general than what the player is run at in terms of their effective stats, but also enemies that are solo enemies, like the Flesh Eater right here. Or the Mind Eater is a really good example. No, was it? Which one was it? This one right here, the Soul Eater. This thing's supposed to be super threatening, but piercing 125% meant that backstab, when it has 250 HP, was just one-shotting it. And so one of the things that's a problem here is that enemies, particularly solo enemies, but also some enemies that are in groups, are just a bit too fragile and die just too easily. So I need to find some way of addressing it. There probably are going to be certain enemy types that get an HP bump. So let's actually, this is a good time to bring this up. So this is the calculator that I'm using currently for calculating. I should make sure it's not being blocked by my face. But this is a calculator that I'm using for calculating enemy stats. So if I were to take sort of the process that I do as hit 0 stats, what level should it be? You know, maybe it should be level 18. That gives me like an HP range for it, but this is the HP calculated at level 18. And then maybe like it's supposed to have some pretty good strength and some reasonable dexterity, and I don't know, here's some fire, some winds, and like let's just say earth and water can just be evenly split. So I hit that, and it fills it up to the 0.75. And now here is my stat block. Now this thing is currently no threat because it doesn't deal any damage. Enemies that don't deal damage are not a threat. Go figure. So, maybe... So right here I'm seeing the 3-shot minimum is 73. So if I put 1 in here and 1 in here, that's putting me up to 93. That's maybe a little bit more than I want. So this is sort of the process that I use for building an enemy. Just kind of showing a little bit of trial and error here. Okay, that seems about good. So maybe I want this at like 1.2 for each of these. So that kind of puts it average threat territory. This is a chance to 2-shot a player, given they don't have armor, reducing the amount of damage they take. But like this is the rough sort of area. So maybe I'm like, maybe I want that to be more like 1.1 on strength. So that way it kind of tucks it down a little bit. And then I can bump the physical accuracy up a little bit to represent a better crit rate for critical hits. And so that gets me kind of like a critical factor. It's like, your critical is maybe a little on the weak side. So this kind of gets a final deadliness factor of average threat, which is where I aim for a lot of enemies to be. The best way to get something to be less than an average threat is to just lower damage or low stats. Just like zero out some stats, and they'll be lower, things like that. But what this average threat value does is it specifies how much reward experience they should give, because like you should have to kill this many average threat level enemies to be able to gain a level, is kind of what the basic math is here. And then here's reward gold, and then I can just use this to copy this text, right? So this is sort of the process that I use to build enemies. And I think I need to add some additional stuff here for just like, maybe enemies should have a stat total of 1 instead of 0.75. Just say, that should be up a little bit. Maybe high on them should be not 3, but maybe it should be like 0.4 to kind of just represent players getting access to stuff that buff their stats a bit. Or maybe I should just like say that, well, a level 18 enemy should have a level 19 or 20 enemies stat total, right? So if I jump down here, this is 52 strength. If I bump up here, it's now 57. You can see over here. Just things like that can potentially tweak things. And, stuff that's like, 50% more. Maybe I want to have 50% more strength, and maybe I should just add a thing that's over here that's like buffed by 50% or something. I don't know. But part of like, that's not strictly necessary. I can just go 0.36 here. And now like it makes it way more threatening because it's over the stat total, but that would be 50% more strength. Right. So that's mimicking like a ring that does that. And I could, have this in response. So I had to make that 19. This is going to be 0.095. Like it's still above, right? But it doesn't meaningfully do anything to its damage. So it leaves it at average threat level when I do kind of that swap. But you kind of get the idea of like, maybe I want to build something over here into the side that can represent like the effect of rings or other things that are like equipment that buff your stats. That might be an approach that I want to take as well. I'm just kind of like spitballing ideas here. I might go with that one, actually. I like that idea. So anyway, yeah, HP on enemies is probably going to need to go up some, particularly for enemies that are supposed to be fewer. But the other thing that I want to do is like, enemy damage is, I feel, in a reasonable spot if they get to actually attack the player party. And one of the things that's been a problem is like the player party's ability to just like, we're faster than all the enemies. We're going to kill you all before you can get any moves in. Like this was a particular problem with the enticers right here, where it's like, these guys are supposed to do stuff that like helps buff their team and do other things and be disruptive. But you can't actually effectively kill them, or like they can't actually effectively do that because like a single backstab just one-shots them. And backstab is just it's very, very powerful. I might just leave it, like, I dramatically increased how much MP it costs. But if I increase enemy durability, then maybe backstab isn't going to be a one-shot all the time. Maybe it should cost more MP? I don't really know. So that we have to be more judicious in using it. But basically, I'm just trying to figure out balancing all this stuff to a point where it feels like things are properly threatening. What I actually want to do for the enticers is I want to add a flag to them that's like VIP, so that way the enticed will be like, oh, a VIP is being targeted, I'm going to guard for that instead of like substitute, right? So that way you can't effectively hit enticers until you kill all of their enticed. I don't want exactly that. I'll probably do some sort of, actually, you know what I should do is I should just have like enticers and enticed have some sort of like blood bond. So this is a Guild Wars 1 skill that you place on yourself, and damage that would be dealt to you is partially split to your minions. So maybe it should just be like, oh, I'm taking damage. One of the random enticed that I have will take 75% of that damage, and I'll take only 25%. Something like that, maybe. I don't know. I need some solution to make them a little bit more durable, but still like targetable. Because you do kind of want to take them down first. I don't know. It's trying to figure out what the right balance of things is, to where it's like you need to make this a priority, but it should actually have a chance to do things, and the enticed get in the way of you trying to kill them somehow, and I don't know. I can just make them more durable as well, or I could make them more resistant to piercing, or part of it too that would help is if I had the ability to differentiate between ranged stuff and melee stuff. Melee stuff should just be like, if I could, I'd make it to where each enticed that's alive makes it harder to hit them with melee attacks, but not impact ranged attacks. Like you can still shoot them with a bow, but there's not really a system for that currently. And I might be able to insert one, but yeah, we'll see what my exact solution is. The other thing though that I've been thinking as I've been kind of like playtesting and figuring this out is I kind of want to see if I can re-rig the why do these not have an obvious note field anyway? But anyway, I want to rig up some sort of system for calculating out the relative levels between the player party and the enemy troop to skew the preemptive system, to use kind of a system where if you are like 5 or more levels below the enemy, they will always preempt you, which means that if you go against some of these harder enemy groups, they will like be able to load your party down with damage and put you on a back foot. And it'll go the other way too. If you're like more than 5 levels above the enemy group, they will you'll be able to really take them down with by having a preemptive on them guaranteed, and it'll kind of like scale in between. So scale in between, I don't know how I want to do that, but where if you have more relative HP, or if you have more relative level, like but not more than 5, it'll be like maybe you have a 50% chance sort of thing. It'll probably be more like 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, but you get the idea. So anyway, I'm thinking of trying out a system like that to just kind of, because again, it's like the damage ratios. If the enemy is able to load a lot of damage in on you, and then I probably also just want to do more to adjust how speed works a little bit to make it so that way, because I don't have a speed stat per se. So like, I don't know. I just need to kind of figure out some of this stuff. So the first thing that I'm really going to want to experiment with is that preemptive system and kind of see how that feels. So if you want to see a lot of this stuff in action, I'm not really going to play it here on this video because there's a whole playtest stream, link in the description for the most recent playtest at the time of this recording. That will get you a bunch of information about like what's going on and where things are at and all that sort of stuff, and what I'm basing things on. So other things, like I said, updating the enemies was kind of the big thing I did. I've updated a bunch of the player skills. I think I did a lot of that last time. I did tweak, like I said, Phantom Kunai felt like it was doing a bit too much damage, so I tweaked it down a little bit and increased its MP cost. I still feel like I need to figure out where to balance MP costs. From the Shadows seems to be an okay spot. Hunter Strike is maybe a little strong. I'm not sure. I think it's all right. I still need to update the Druid to be functional. I've nerfed 1d4 of Dark. I might need to nerf it a little bit more. I don't know. I might nerf it by increasing its MP cost to like 30. That actually sounds pretty reasonable. Let's just do that right now. Reckless Bash is also extremely hard hitting. I think the proper response actually is just going to be to do that to it. Just increase its costs a bit. We'll see how that is. Burning Intensity felt a little weak to me at 12 MP. I like that at 7, I think. You know, I'm going to bump this one up a bit to 10. Just, it'll make Burning Intensity feel a bit better in comparison. And frankly, that skill is pretty strong. I'm going to need to tweak the costs on a lot of AoE stuff. AoE stuff needs to just be more expensive in general. I did get the chance to unlock Recharge. I didn't really have good chances to use it. One of the things that becomes a problem right now is that there's not a good, like, it's hard to expend TP as a caster. And so, like, there's this thing where it's like, if you're a physical attacker, you probably aren't really spending MP very much. And if you're a magical attacker, like if you're a caster, you're probably not spending TP. So this skill is kind of like a little bit of a miss right now. I'll see if I can tweak it to a spot that I'm happy with. But yeah, one of the things I'm still really figuring out is what should MP costs look like. Because I don't feel like I entirely know in terms of like rate of wearing the player out and things like that. Let's see. I don't think there's a whole lot else. I'm just going to mark this done for the moment. If I can spell done. And I'll be going over a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I'll be going over a lot of this stuff more. But yeah, I do need more types of enemies. One thing that I added as a bit of an experiment that I'm liking but needs a little bit of modification. Yeah, I mentioned that I want to reconfigure this already. But one of the things that I tried as an experiment that I'm liking is no, not Iron Hill, right here. This NPC, I added a test for just selling you bestiary pages, and it worked really well. There's some stuff that I need to do to it. I need to make the bestiary pages that they sell have better descriptions. But this is a way of being able to get it. I also want to make it so that way you can only buy one of each page, or like if you have the page, you can't buy it again. That's just going to be turning the enable to be like, hey, if the player has one of these, then they can't buy it. That'll probably be useful for other stuff too. Yeah, I have some ideas for some of that. But yeah. So anyway, but this system allows you to purchase bestiary pages so that way you can look up information about enemies that you haven't been able to kill yet. Is kind of the idea. But yeah, I need to make enemies a little bit more durable so that way some of their special skills actually are relevant. And it's kind of an intricate dance on number of enemies in the group and other things like that. So I'll be tweaking the tool to better kind of facilitate some of that math. Anything else? Really? I feel like that covers a lot of it. A lot of the stuff that I've done so far has just been skill stuff and updating enemies. So that way I had things to test. I'm overall happy about the direction things are going, but I got a lot of work ahead of me. So you can always leave questions down below in the comments, and I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here and maybe not have one of these be an hour long for a change. That would be nice. So the big thing that I want is I want to figure out the proper balance of like this random encounter. I want them to be engaging enough without being like too repetitive or too tedious or things like that. So I just need to make more encounters as well for various areas. I wish that I had a better way of making troops, but it is kind of what it is, unfortunately. At least currently. So yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. So until next time, everyone, thank you all for watching. Take care. Goodbye.